My name is Jerry Gill. Today is February 16th, 2009. I'm visiting with Dr. Claud Evans in his home here in Okemah, Oklahoma. This interview is for the O State Storage Project of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Dr. Evans, appreciate you taking time to visit with us today.
Thank you.
I want to start kind of at the beginning. Is that okay? Can you tell me a little bit about where you grew up, a little bit about your family life and your family?
Okay. I was born and reared at Poteau, Oklahoma, southeast Oklahoma, the youngest of 15 children. 11 of us grew up to be adults, 4 died as infants. I went to Poteau Dunbar Grade School, which was the black school at the time there at Poteau. Then I went to junior high at Pansy Kid, which was the integrated school. And then the Poteau High School, graduated Poteau High School in 1961. Had to think about the date there for a second. My mom basically was an at-home mom. My dad did carpenter work and ministry work. And we always had a parent at home.
Claude, your father, was he a Baptist minister?
Correct. Baptist minister. And
minister's son.
So I'm one of those
preacher's boy.
PKs, what's it called? PKs, preacher's kids or something.
That's right.
Yeah.
Claude, was there some things, if you tell me a little bit about your family has a long history. I was trying to remember from an earlier conversation, did your grandparents come to Texas on a...
Yeah, well, actually in 1903, my dad was 12 years old at the time. He and his other siblings and his mom and dad and 7 other families left Yoakum, Texas by wagon train, coming to Indian Territory. And they actually finally ended up at Tiger Mountain, which is over by Henrietta, which is about 25 miles from here, where they actually ended up. I guess they spent their first nights after they got to this area at a town called Grayson. And my granddad died there not too long after they got here. And one of my uncles died there in that area. Later on, my dad and the family moved to Howe, Oklahoma, where they worked in the coal mines. And then, of course, my dad met my mom, and they later lived at Poteau, and that's where the majority of us were born and grew up. Some of my older brothers and sisters were, I think, born at Howe, Oklahoma, while Dad was working in the coal mines there. He and my Uncle Claude, they moved their families to Poteau, and that's where we ended up settling in. But they started at Yoakum, Texas.
Your father then was a working minister. Worked mines and preached.
Yeah, he was a working minister.
What do you remember about your early days in the church and with your father?
Well, we didn't have a nursery at our church, but there was still no foolishness out of the kids. And I don't really remember something, but one of the things that I'm told is that I was, I guess, making more noise than I needed to make when I was small, and he actually came out of the pulpit and took care of me and set me back down, and that was that. And I guess I've been quiet in church ever since. In fact, sometimes...
Well, did your father die when you were young?
13. Died when I was 13 years old. Yeah.
It'd be a pretty traumatic experience for you with all that many children and
siblings. Well, I was the youngest, so there weren't any younger kids, and I was 13. But it was a bad weekend because the same weekend that my dad died, someone poisoned my dog. I had a little dog named Rounder, and someone was going through the neighborhood poisoning dogs about that time, and both of them died the same weekend. Still remember both of them quite well.
What influence? I'm trying to think. You're in Poto, and Oklahoma State's a long ways away. What influenced you to come to Oklahoma State University, Claude?
Well, when I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, a black veterinarian, J.W. Montgomery, who was on the Board of Regents for Oklahoma State University, moved to our community. And he was really the tallest man I think I had ever seen, and had the biggest hands of any man that I'd ever seen. And it was just quite impressive. He and Mrs. Montgomery moved there. And so that was my introduction to veterinary medicine, in knowing Dr. Montgomery. And when my dad died, he was actually just like a father that had stepped in, because he did a lot of counseling with me. I still send him a Father's Day card on Father's Day, and when Mrs. Montgomery was living, I sent her a Mother's Day card, because that's kind of the relationship. Had tremendous respect for Dr. and Mrs. Montgomery and what he would say, and he would tell me when I did something wrong, and he would tell me when I did something right. So he played a huge part in my selecting veterinary medicine as a career pathway.
So you come to OSU with the intention of being a veterinarian.
That is correct.
Doctor.
When I left high school, I came to OSU with the intentions of being a veterinarian.
Well, Claude, when you came in the fall of '61,
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
September '61.
Can you tell me what your first impressions of Oklahoma State were? It's a pretty big place.
It's a big place, but fortunately, my mom and I had visited the campus the summer before, and we had gone up, and so I had seen the campus before coming there as a freshman. But one of my older brothers would come from Wichita and pick me up, and I had big old Foot Locker type suitcase. It wasn't suitcases, it Foot Lockers. Put all my stuff in them, because I didn't have a car. I was headed off to school for the year, literally. And he would come and pick me up in September, transport me to Stillwater. And I would, of course, you get to meet students. And I met students from Leflore County that had cars and things. And so I was able to come home for Thanksgiving and get home for Christmas. And then in May, at the end of school, he would come and pick me up and take me back to Poto. But one brother kind of took it as his responsibility to get me to school at the beginning of the school year and to pick me up in May. And anything in the middle, I was kind of on my own.
So you were going to be a veterinarian, but did you have a major as an undergraduate? Did you?
I have a degree from Oklahoma State in agricultural biochemistry.
What do you recall some professors there that influenced your development, that were influential to you?
Oh, Fred Lacrone was probably one of the positive influences. He was a really nice man, really a nice person. Dr. Jones, Randall Jones, was the dean of the School of Agriculture at that time. He was a nice person. The teachers, a little bit harder to remember it in specifics, unless you're remembering something that wasn't quite as nice. But and we won't go into those things. But one of the teachers that probably scared me the most was my freshman animal husbandry, Dr. Whiteman, Dr. Joe Whiteman. He was so big, and boy, he could scare you. He could scare you to death, and so you would tend to want to study, and you didn't want him on your bad side. But Dr. Lacrone, Fred Lacrone, Dr. Rendell Jones, the dean, were probably. Dr. Lacrone was my advisor, and I think he must have been one of the better advisors at Oklahoma State University at that time, because I think he really cared about students and really tried to help them a lot.
Claude, were there any black professors on campus at that time? Did you have any courses?
Oh, no. We're talking 1961.
Right.
1961. There were no black professors. I think there was one person that was a graduate student that maybe helped the guy from Arkansas.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of his name.
That maybe helped with it as a graduate student, but there were no black professors in 61, nor 62, nor 63, nor 64.
Well, and picking up on that, I mean, you know, at that time you were still probably one of the earlier African American students on campus. And do you recall how many students from the work? And you recall?
Mostly there were quite a few athletes on campus at that time. There weren't a lot. The number wise, I'm thinking maybe 50, 75 at the most, but I would have to really stretch my imagination, I think, to reach 75. But I think I could probably, in 61, maybe come up with 50, maybe.
Claude, did you feel comfortable on campus? I mean, did you feel, and I hope you'll feel free to answer this the way you feel, did you feel welcomed by white students at that time? Or
some, and some not. And one of the things that you learn over time is I personally have a radar system that it just kind of, and to me, I think it's right the majority of the time. I just get a feel for a person when I meet them, speak to them, look in the eye, and you kind of get a feel for, is this a person, a good person, or a person that maybe you distance yourself from? And there were excellent students there, but there were some that, just like today, that were not, and by my definition, genuine, excellent people.
Was there much social interaction between black and white students in your era?
Not a lot. There were some. Again, there were some, but not a lot. In 61, probably the big social event of the week was Sunday night, when those that left campus came back to campus and would all meet on the fourth floor of the student union. A lot of us. I shouldn't say all. That's not a good statement. But many of us would meet on the fourth floor of the student union, where, they had the little coffee bar up there where you could get Cokes and coffee, and have the jukebox in the room there, and
Starlight Lounge in the big 8 room.
Yeah, and you had a chance to meet with in fact, that's where I met Elayne, was on the fourth floor of the student union.
You're getting ahead of my story. If I was going to ask you a question, we'll come back to well, Claude, I'll just ask you, you're talking about some of your professors, some were more receptive than others. Did you have some less than positive interaction with some of the white students at the time? Was that ever a problem for you?
Not a major problem, because, again, you learn how to avoid many situations. You don't put yourself into certain situations that can lead to problems. But sure, there were individuals that weren't real concerned about the wording that they used at times, but they were the exception rather than the rule. And again, as I said, I basically didn't put myself into that situation often. But, probably, from an instructor point of view, the most negative situations would probably come from the graduate student helpers that were there and they were the ones that back then that did a lot of grading of your papers, took care of many of them handled the laboratories, and you were more likely, in my case, to run into people that you felt were not genuine among that level of instructor, the graduate student level versus the professors.
I think there's a little difference sometimes in how maybe papers are graded.
I personally know that there was a little bit of difference sometimes in the way papers were graded. And I remember going once to one of my instructors, Dr. Johnson, in the chemistry department, because I felt that I hadn't received a just evaluation. And of course, back in the 60s, students had no rights. It doesn't matter if you were black, white, yellow, green, purple. If you were a student, it's not like today where students have many rights and they can express those rights and have appropriate actions taken on that. I remember in one of my chemistry courses, second one, we would have 3 exams, hour exams, so over the course of the semester. And on 2 exams, I had very strong, good A's grades. On the 3rd exam, I was about a point or 2 points from an A with a B, but I got a C out of the course.
No comment.
No comment. And so, yeah.
Which we can laugh about it now, but it wasn't very funny at the time.
It wasn't funny at all at the time. And of course, I went to Dr. Johnson, and he, of course, they support their graduate students, whatever the graduate students say.
Well, get back to where we were going earlier about it. Now, when you were there wasn't a whole lot of guys, African American guys. But now females are probably even less. Was it a little difficult to get a date?
It was probably a ratio of 4 to 1. About 4 guys to every female when I went there in 61, 62. And, it was. But of course, it wasn't that difficult for me about worrying about a day because I was there as a student. I was there, I wasn't trying to be the big guy on campus or see how many dates I could have or any of those things. So, but the ratio was about 4 to 1, and so it made for interesting situations.
But, now, what would you do on dates back in the early 60s?
Well,
where'd you go?
Well, Elayne and I would walk to the movie if she had enough money to pay her own way. Most of our dates, we were both poor students going to school. Most of our dates were Dutch Treat. Not all, but the majority of them were Dutch. If we went out to eat on Sunday afternoons, because all of our meals at that time she ate in the dorm. She was over in Murray Hall, and I was in Cordell Hall, and both of those dorms had cafeterias back in the early 60s. And so 20 of the 21 meals were served in your dorm. The only meal that was not served was Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. But Sunday breakfast was served, usually a big dinner on Sunday noontime. And then Sunday night, there was no meals served at those 2 dorms. And so sometimes we would go down to there on Washington Street, right off of University, there were several little hamburger type places there. Or we would go to Chat and Chew at the Wesley Foundation. The BSU had things going on Sunday afternoon, but the Wesley Foundation had better food.
Exactly. You moved from being a Baptist
So
to Methodist.
that's when I shifted from being a Baptist to a Methodist.
Sort of food for the soul, so to speak.
Food for the soul. But that and Elayne and I had a lot of library dates. We would go to the library. We were both there as serious students, and so a lot of our dates were at the library. Most of the time, she would come to the library, I'd go to the library, and then I'd walk her over to Murray Hall after we left the library, and I'd then hot-footed back over to Cardell.
Yeah, there were some favorite student hangouts at that time, Claude.
Probably the most favorite hangout at that time was probably the fourth floor of the student union. Most of us at that time didn't have cars. There were a few of us that had cars, but the majority of us didn't have cars. And most of the athletes were probably in practice or something during the week and had curfews or whatever the athletes had at that time. So I didn't see very many of them during the week. But on weekend, most times if there was something going on, it would be at the student union.
Well, we're talking about the student union. You said you first met Elayne there.
Yes.
Is there a story there, Claude? I mean, yeah. When did you first meet her? What?
Well, I was there 1 year before she was. I was there 61. She came in 62, and her roommate at that time was a young lady from McAllister, I think. Yeah, from McAllister, and the first night back then, school tended to start on Monday, and so people would gather there that Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening, and that Sunday night, almost everybody of us would be on the fourth floor of the student union, just meeting and seeing who was there, who made it back after the summer. And so Marilyn brought her roommate, Elayne, with her up to the student union. She introduced her to everybody, and I was just one of everybody that she got introduced to. Nothing special, nothing fancy. I think I called her country or something, but other than that,
Bells didn't go off immediately.
No, bells didn't ring, anything like that. No fireworks.
Mm-hmm. When did you start dating regularly?
A couple of years later, but regularly probably. We had a couple of dates, but
Did you get married after your senior year?
we got married our senior year, March 19th. Our senior year, as we were headed out to sell books.
Oh, gosh. What did you work during your student years?
Yeah,
Student jobs?
I had sometimes two jobs. Janitorial, dishwashing. That sometimes I was dishwashing in the dorm, sometimes janitorial. One job had to do with one of the labs over in agriculture, checking some tests that a graduate student had going and checking them, and delivering janitorial supplies in the dorm, working as proctor on the desk. I would work on the desk probably my junior and senior year. There was more of that type of stuff. Working, answering the phone there at the desk.
Were you in Cordell Hall all that time?
Cordell Hall until the fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha. I remember Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. And we got a house through the university because we had been unfairly treated with another house we were trying to get. There was a house owned by the Catholic Church that they'd been trying to sell, and one of our fraternity members found out about it some kind of way, and we actually met with the priest for the church and had made arrangements to purchase the house. But sooner or later, you have to show up in the neighborhood. if you're buying a house that you plan to live in, and there were some things that the house needed. So part of the agreement was that if we fixed and took care of, and there were some plumbing issues, and one of our members' dad was a plumber, so we started working, getting this house ready, and fixing plumbing and doing things that needed to be done. And in the middle of this process, the house sold. Been on the market forever. And I don't know for sure, but we were told that one of the dads of one of the sorority members purchased the house. And so, we told the university that we wanted a fraternity house like everyone else. But we were working against a system that wasn't just. And that's really how we got the house over on Washington. And that was owned by the university, right next to the farmhouse. The house that was right there next to the farmhouse. We got it because that was the only way the university could figure to try to make things right that were very wrong.
Who were some of the other members of your fraternity at that time, you recall?
Kenneth Kimbrough, Curtis Triggs, Hilario Mukes, Bill Hogan, George Bournes, Wardell Hollis, Sam Ward, Curtis Triggs, Landers, Zanders, Ron Zanders. There were quite a few.
I recognize some of that. I played football for Wardell.
Yeah.
Good guy. So during the summers, you sold Bible books at Southwestern Company? So you start the summer before your senior year?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's which was the summer of '65. Kenneth Kimbrough and I sold books in Tampa, Florida.
Who was your student manager? Your student sales manager?
I remember Spencer Hayes being the general manager. Claud Evans. Yeah. Good guy. Great guy.
Any, of course, there'd be so many, but is there any particular stories at Southwestern that you want to kind of share maybe with people that don't understand what selling Bible books door to door is all about? You might enlighten them a little bit.
Well, first of all, Tampa, Florida was where I sold for 5 summers. And in those 5 summers, Tampa, Florida, Fort Worth, Texas,
Tampa, Florida,
Columbus, Georgia, then Fort Worth, Texas, then Houston, Texas, then Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. And for those 5 summers, in terms of really meeting rude people, I didn't meet probably 10 in all those summers. Probably the most interesting summer was the summer that we were in Fort Worth, Texas, which was the summer that they had the riots and fires in Detroit and Michigan and those areas. And every weekend, the rumor went through Fort Worth and Dallas that they were going to burn Dallas that weekend. So that made that made for rough selling all the week. And of course, I was a student at that time at Tuskegee Institute in veterinary medicine. So I had an Alabama license on my car. And I remember going into this one neighborhood, and we would park our car in the middle of the neighborhood, in the middle of the block, and then work that entire block without having to move our car. And I had just parked my car there in the middle of the block and got out, and the guy came up and says, "You're one of those outside agitators. I see that Alabama license on your car." and he made some serious threats. And most times nothing bothered your day too much if you were a Southwestern salesman. You just kind of like a duck in water, just kind of live. But that hung on for a day or two.
So you how many hours would you work in a week?
About 80. About 80. Kenneth, that first summer, Kenneth and I both would work 80 hours a week. We early in the morning until about dark, all and then on Saturdays, all summer long. And it was a good thing for me because it allowed me to be able to go to school. It allowed me to be able to finish school with a lot less debt than I would have had otherwise. And I went the first summer single. The next summer I went as married, Elayne and I. And so she was out on the book field with me for 4 summers. And
Claude, moving back to OSU there, what were some of you said you were Alpha Phi, other activities, organizations that you were engaged in as a student?
Oh, let's see. One of the things that I remember living in Cordell Hall, chairman of the homecoming float committee one year, and we had a winning float that Cordell Hall produced. That was an interesting experience, trying to be sure that a vehicle that's covered completely doesn't stop in the middle of the parade route. I didn't play any official sports, any university sports. I was involved with the BSU, the Baptist Student Union, and
but you had the Wesley Foundation,
right? but I didn't spend as much time at the Wesley Foundation, but I started to spend particularly Sunday evenings when there was food.
Claude, looking back at your undergraduate experience at Oklahoma State University, do you have any favorite memories that stand out in your mind?
Graduation. a very, very favorite memory as a student would have to be graduation. But I think the main thing are the people that you meet as students, friends that you make. Those people are still friends, and some of us still stay in contact with each other. And recently, a few years ago, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8, I'm not sure exactly, but the Black Alumni Association became more active and had a chance then to see even more students that we had known as students, more people that we'd known as students. And so I think the opportunity to meet people and make lasting friends is one of the strong memories for me. As I said, I was basically just a student. I wasn't involved with university athletics or any of those other things. And one of the people that I met happened to be Elayne, in terms of meeting good people.
Well, you were working quite a bit, so you
and I was
working much time.
Working every day to go to school. One of the memories that wasn't a fun or favorite memory was when President Kennedy was assassinated. I was just there, and the whole nation was just in awe that this had occurred. And what do you do when you don't know what to do? You call mama. I remember calling my mom and talking about it, and she said, I got your letter, because I wrote home. I would write home about once a week or 10 days or so. I wrote home pretty frequently to mama. Didn't do that much calling, but would write letters. And I guess in the letter that I had written her, I told her that room and board was coming due. And at that point, room and board in Cordell Hall was approximately $75, about $73 or $74 a pay period, a month. And I had written her a letter telling her that, just as a point of information, that our room and board was coming up. And so when we finished talking about the assassination, she says, "Oh, by the way, I'm putting my check in the mail to you to pay your room and board." So what are you talking about? Well, my mother received a widow's check pension that was about $73, $74 a month. And she said, "I'm putting that in the mail for so you'll be sure and be able to pay your room and board." I said, "Well, Mom, I don't need it. I'm working 2 jobs and it's okay." I said, "I'm 19. If I can't make it now, shame on me." And but the thing was, she was ready to send me what she had to live on for a month to be sure that I was able to stay in school. Now, that'll make you go back and do a little bit more studying when you have parents. Because my mom did, she was a housewife. She did laundry work. She washed people's clothes and ironed them. And I've seen her hang up clothes in the wintertime where the clothes would be, she'd have them in a basket. She didn't have a dryer. Clothes would be freezing by the time she'd get to the end. Those first clothes that she hung up on the line would be freezing by the time she got to the bottom clothes in the basket that she was hanging. I knew about freeze-dried clothes long before I knew about freeze-dried coffee. And so there was no way that I was going to have my mama sending me money to go to school when I knew what she had to do to get the money to live. And I was always very aware of all the sacrifices she made. But all of us kids, there are a bunch of us kids, but every one of us that ever wanted to go to college went. Don't ask me how. I'm not sure how, other than I know that there's a God that makes things happen. And she was ready to make that sacrifice of what she had to live on for a whole month to be sure that I stayed at Oklahoma State University in terms of being able to pay my room and board. But she didn't send it. I told her I didn't need it. I was working 2 jobs, and if I couldn't make it then, shame on me.
Well, Claude, when you graduated, I guess in '66, spring of '66, and then you applied for OSU, College of Veterinary Medicine.
More than once.
More than once, a couple of times. And did not get accepted.
That's correct.
How'd that make you feel?
Well, you have to know Claud Evans a little bit to realize, because first of all, it makes you not feel good, just in a sentence. But you have to realize that my goal was to be a veterinarian, and my goal was not to worry about why I didn't get into OSU. I could still be sitting up there worrying about why I didn't. My goal was to be a veterinarian. So then after a couple of times, I found alternative pathways.
That was Tuskegee.
That was Tuskegee Institute, state of Alabama. Then I interned at the University of California, Davis. But I never spent a lot of time trying to figure out all the whys. I knew things happened along the way, like the chemistry I was telling you about a few minutes ago. And at that point in time, there was no need of me trying to fight City Hall.
Claude, there were only maybe 1 or 2 black students enrolled in total college at that time. Is that right?
At that time, I think there was only 1 enrolled. A guy named Dr. Magruder, D.R.C. Magruder, was enrolled at that time.
What a little bit about your experience at Tuskegee? Was that a good experience for you there?
It's probably the best experience. It's probably the best thing that could have ever happened. My mom had to be one of the wisest ladies ever. And she said, sometimes one door closes because there's another one that God wants you to see. And I doubt very seriously if I would have been on the Board of Regents at Oklahoma State University had I not gone to Tuskegee, because a lot of things occurred that helped to prepare me for that responsibility of being a regent. Had I gone to Oklahoma State University School of Veterinary Medicine, I probably would have ended up as a practitioner here in Oklahoma somewhere. That would have been kind of the end of it. But my Tuskegee experience led to international experiences, corporate experiences, many, many experiences that I think benefited me as a person and also helped to prepare me for some of the things necessary for being a regent.
Claude, you got your internship after you finished at Tuskegee there at the University of California.
That's
Davis.
correct. That's correct.
Was that a little bit of a culture shock for you going from Oklahoma and Alabama to the West Coast?
California versus Oklahoma, Alabama was a culture shock. That was, that was the heyday of Berkeley. 1970 was when we did our internship at Davis, and
war protests.
It was a culture shock. It was, but again, it was a good experience, and I think it helped a lot in helping me to realize that this world is made up of many, many, many types of people.
Claude, you mentioned, they gave you several different opportunities. Can you trace just sort of briefly for us a little bit when you, after you finished your internship, some of your corporate experience, because you were in the corporate world for several years before you become a practitioner. Could you share
11
some of
years.
those experiences?
Sure.
11 years.
We were out at Davis, basically minding our own business. University of California, Davis, and we received a letter from Ralston Purina Company inviting us to come in and explore a possible career opportunity with Ralston Purina. Well, at that point, I wasn't that interested in corporate because I was doing an internship in equine medicine and surgery, and we were doing knees on horses and gut anastomosis on horses, and written a couple of papers about some issues with horses, and I was going to be an equine practitioner. And we really liked Northern California. In fact, when we left Davis, that's the only place that we lived, and we've lived coast to coast twice over the years. That's the only place that we ever lived that Elayne cried when we were driving out of town. So it was not an easy decision, but At this same time as we were midway through this internship and had received this letter from Purina, we were trying to decide what we were going to do with our farm and our livestock here in Oklahoma. Elayne's mom and dad had taken care of our cattle all these years because of our job with Southwestern. We were able to not only go to school, but we were able to buy our first cows and buy our first land, as well as go to school. The summer job opportunity with Southwestern was a tremendous opportunity for us. So we were trying to decide, do we just tell mother and dad, her mom and dad, let's just forget the livestock industry. We're going to practice here in California. We appreciate all the years you all have put into the farm, but we're not going to pick it up and go from there. Or do we go back? Well, being interns, students, we didn't have a lot of money to make trips from California back to Oklahoma, but we needed to talk to mother and dad. And I'm just being totally honest with you as to how I ended up with Purina. And then I remembered, I told Elayne, I said, didn't Purina invite us back to St. Louis to tell them about a job opportunity? She said, yeah. I said, where's that letter? She said, I think we threw it up around the mantle of the fireplace. Looked up there, and sure enough, it was still up there. I said, well, we could let Purina pay our way back to St. Louis. And then we can stop through Oklahoma, talk to mother and dad, and as a family, we can make a decision on what we're going to do with the farm. And we won't be out of that much money, just the stop off part. So I contacted Purina and told them, yeah, we'd come out and take a look. And they said, fine. I said, now I'll be bringing my wife with you. They said, well, we don't usually bring the wife on the first visit. I said, well, if she doesn't come, don't need for me to come, because if she didn't like it, we wouldn't be there anyway. They said, okay, bring her. So we flew out to St. Louis, and then we routed our ticket back to Oklahoma City. Mother and dad met us at the airport. We came and spent a day at the farm and decided to keep the farm going. Flew back out to Davis. I contacted Purina that, yeah, we would go with them. When the internship was over, they moved us to St. Louis, and that's how we got started with them. We moved there with that, we'll stay a year or two, learn some parts of the corporate world. Well, we were there, those 1 or 2 years turned into 11.
Now part of that was with let's see, Purina.
Well, I started out with the chow division,
yeah,
as a veterinary consultant, poultry pathology in the chow division. But I was only in that division about 6 months. And Purina made the decision to open a professional marketing area. And Chuck Rosso, the veterinarian in consumer products, moved to marketing, and which left a vacancy in the consumer products, the pet food area, for a veterinarian. And one day, Doug Hill, the vice president R&D, came over to the veterinary services group. There were about 11 or 12 of us veterinarians in that group at that time. Came over there, and it must have been right around 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning or something. I didn't know him from Jack Spratt. I've been there 4 or 5 months or so, and he comes, and Joyce Messman, which was one of the secretaries in the area, had been there a long time, was there. And I just walked out of the laboratory area where we did necropsies and things on birds and things. I just walked out of there into the area of the offices where there was a little break room where they had coffee pot and stuff. And it just got me a cup of coffee. Doug Hill comes in, and I'm sitting there sipping my coffee, and he says, I thought I'd find you up to your elbows in blood and guts out there in the laboratory. said, "Oh, I'm very good. I'm already through with that." And he said, "Ooh, it's deep in here." And he kind of catches his pants leg and walks out the door laughing. Joyce Messman, she starts laughing. And I'm thinking, she said, "Do you know who that was?" I said, "No." She said, "That was only Doug Hill, the vice president of R&D. I said, "Okay." So he goes on back up to his office over in the other building. And a few days later, Dr. Darby, a veterinarian who was over our total area, calls me into his office. And then that's when he tells me that Chuck Rosso over there in consumer products was moving to marketing, where they were opening up a new professional marketing group for veterinarians. And Doug Hill wanted to talk to me about that position. So I go over and talk to Doug, and when I walk in, he starts laughing. I start laughing, and of course, I moved over into that area, and I was in consumer products for about 5 years. And Tony Ingram, who was the vice president for production, consumer products, had a chance to meet him. Well, during that time, I became a member of the Management Advisory Board, which was a board of 16 people. 8 people went on each year. It was a staggered 8-year term. You're on the board for 2 years. This was a board selected by Hal Dean, the chairman of the board, for in-house management training. And so I was on the Management Advisory Board for 2 years. Had a chance to meet all the corporate officers. Had a chance to learn a lot. This is what I'm saying. A lot of the things that would not have happened had I not gone to Tuskegee. All these things would not have happened, because it was through Tuskegee that Purina found out that I existed in California. Tony Ingram said, if you're going to stay in industry, and we didn't have any kids at this point, if you're going to stay in industry, you need to learn something about production. So he set up a program for me to go to Davenport, Iowa, and start to learn the production side of industry. Mm-hmm. And in 1977, we moved to Davenport, where I was a management trainee for several months, and then became manager of quality assurance for the production of both human foods and pet foods. We were there about 20 months, and Tony Ingram was asked by Purina to go to San Diego and try to get chicken of the sea into the black. They had been into the red several years. And Tony selected a team of individuals from around the Purina organization, all over, wherever. And I was invited to be a part of that team to go to San Diego and help put some black ink on the books for Chicken of the Sea division. And I went out there as manager of pet food production. All of the seafood, pet foods were made there and in Mexico. We had a co-packer down in Mexico that packed the mackerel pet foods. We were there probably 2 years, or almost 2 years, a little over a year. And then Tony, the person that had gotten me started in production, and I managed about 45 people there. He says, now you need more people experience. So we're going to move you from pet food to human food, where you'll be managing about 800 people. And for the production of Chicken of the Sea human foods. And that's what occurred then for the last 2 years that I was at Chicken of the Sea. And of course, by this time we have kids. Greg's 5, 6, 7 years old during this period that we're out there. And they were looking for someone that in 1982, they were looking for someone to send to American Samoa to manage the Samoan operation. Well, at this point, we had kids and really weren't that interested. And Gregory was 7, and Kelly was 2. Kelly was 2. And that's when we said it's time to go home. So we said, told Elayne's mom and dad that we were thinking about moving back home to see if they could find a place in and around the Okemah area that would be a good location for our clinic. Well, that was like asking a real estate agent to. So they got busy, and we came home in July for family reunion. And they brought us up here, showed us this place. The house was here, the clinic wasn't. There was just pasture. And we looked at it.
I'm going to change tapes in here. Okay. Thanks. Okay. We're starting on tape 2 here.
Okay. Well, we
So,
told
Claude, my question is, you were obviously on a pretty fast track with Farina.
Yeah.
And so was it a tough decision for you?
it was a tough decision, but we wanted our kids to know the grandparents. And at that point, we'd been telling Elayne's mom and dad for about 17 years that we're coming back home one of these days. We're coming back, and they've been taking care of our cows and for about 17 years. So it was, and we wanted the grandkids to know the grandparents, and we wanted the grandparents to know the grandkids. So we had made up our minds that we were moving back home to Oklahoma. And we never looked back. It's one of the better decisions that we've made.
Claude, at that time, how did you open up your own practice, or did you take over another practice?
No, we came and contracted to have a clinic built. I think in November, knowing that we were planning to move here back home during the Christmas holidays of December of '82. And we drove into town Christmas night of '82, and they started building my clinic a few days after January 1. But we'd already come back in November. We'd come back and put the plans together and talked about them and had everything in place.
Was it different? At the time, you were probably one of the few practicing black veterinarians in this part of maybe
in Okfuskee County.
Certainly in Okfuskee County. Yeah.
It was different. When we moved here, there was a non-graduate veterinarian that was practicing in this area and had been here for a lot of years. And several veterinarians, licensed graduate veterinarians, had tried to make it in Okemah and couldn't. Well, we came and we started building our clinic a couple of weeks after we were here because we were not planning to leave. And the gentleman, he decided to retire shortly after we moved here. So, in fact, he had stated that he gave me a call and said he was going to retire and wanted to know if I wanted to buy anything that he had. So I went down, and everything that he had that he wanted to sell, I bought. Some of it went straight to the trash. Some of it we kept for antiques. Some of it we kept because it was good stuff. But whatever he wanted to sell, if he wanted out of business, I wanted to help him and at the same time leave a good taste in his mouth. So he went down and he had medicines. Some of that stuff was so old I'd never heard of it, and some of it was, of course, modern stuff and in date. Some of the equipment was, I've got it over in the drawer now. Still have some of it.
God, were there some people that were uncomfortable, with black veterinarian? Was it without their comfort zone?
There were some, but if you got a sick animal and you got a chance to get it helped, sometimes that overrides some of the things. But Okemah we moved here on purpose. We kind of knew the history of the town, and Okemah's history is not one that the community can be proud of. They have hung people here in Okemah. I was at a funeral today. A guy from Seattle, Washington, that grew up in the Boley area. I was introduced to him, and the guy that introduced him said, Dr. Evans is a veterinarian at Okemah. The guy said, Okemah? And started to thinking about the time, an older guy, when he lived in Boley. And I've gotten that reaction in many, many places. As you know, I've traveled a lot. And you meet someone that knew the area, and they ask you what you do and where you're from, and I say, I'm a veterinarian in Okemah. And you get that same type of reaction. But Okemah has been good to us. And it didn't matter much. I've always had the philosophy that there are good people and there are bad people. It's kind of like being a student at Oklahoma State. There are good people, there are bad people. And you try to serve the good ones that want your services, and don't worry about those that don't. And that hasn't changed a lot. The people that have bad attitudes, they keep bad attitudes. The people that have good attitudes, they keep good attitudes. And the main thing is that you try and provide a good service. And most people are mostly interested in the service. You know, the lady that was at the clinic today, she was happy that her dog got sewed up. And because I guess it was gone for a couple of days and got cut up some kind of way. We're not sure how, but I don't think she paid much attention to the color of the skin holding the suture that would sew up her dog. But she was concerned, I think, that the dog be sewn.
Claude, did you enjoy the change from the corporate area to being a practicing veterinarian?
Moving from San Diego, California to Okemah, America is culture shock.
Reverse culture shock.
Reverse culture shock by any stretch of the imaginations. We lived in a little community called Poway. Elayne didn't cry when we left that I'm aware of, but we liked Poway in that area. Now, we were out there about 4 years ago. When we were out there in the late 70s and early 80s, you could see the hills. There were no houses on them. It was just a nice rural environment of Southern California. We were out there about 4 years ago, and it's wall-to-wall houses and shopping centers. And we just felt that, first of all, that this was a much better environment for raising kids. So we knew we both grew up in Oklahoma. And when we came, we knew exactly where we were coming. There were no surprises. Culture shock, yeah. Surprises, no.
Well, Claude, how's your practice evolved over the years?
It's been good. Okemah, this area has been good to us. But we think we have been good to the community. I work with the school systems. I member of the Chamber of Commerce, been president 2 or 3 times over the years, over the 26 years that we've been living here. Member of the Lions Club, member of the St. Paul's United Methodist Church, currently the chairman of the Administrative Council, which is this the 3rd time for that over the years? Second or third time. Small rural community, you get recycled. It's not like the big cities where one and you're out.
One and done.
One and done. But you get, and the majority of the people have been good. But that's not to say that there are not still a few people with questionable intents. Christmas 2000, modern times. I'm in my clinic, and a man comes in, and Says, Doc, I've lost 8 or 9 cows, and I thought I better come in and try to find out what. I said, sir, why did you wait till you lost so many before you come in to get help? Well, I figured that I could maybe do something, they'd get better, and this is the way they acted. I said, sir, that doesn't help me. I need to see an animal, and preferably one that's still sick that has symptoms. But even if it's dead, we can do an autopsy and maybe figure out what's going on. Yeah, but this is the way they acted. And I said, yes, sir, I understand what you're saying, but that still doesn't help me in making a diagnosis. I really need to see an animal. Well, this goes on for about 10 minutes of me telling him that I really need to see an animal to make a diagnosis, and him telling me, well, this is the way they act. So finally he says, do you know that boy at Bristol? Well, he was talking about Dr. Mitchell, another black veterinarian at Bristol. I said, you mean Dr. Mitchell? He says, yeah. He said, now he's good. He's really good. He can take a horse and turn it inside out and blah, blah. And he goes on. He's just really good. In fact, he's much too good to be colored. And that was in the year 2000. And so, but do you get mad at this man? No. I just wished him a Merry Christmas, shook his hand, and showed him the door. Because it was late in the evening, and I'm ready to come home anyway and eat supper. But it's no good to get mad at him. Maybe he has to pay a little more when he come in for services. but I'm not mad at him.
It's not mad at you either. We're talking about, maybe kind of, if you don't mind, go back to Oklahoma State for a little bit. Then you've had a lifelong relationship with the university, with your alma mater.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for many years, when we first met each other, you were on the board of directors of the Alumni Association.
Right.
And been involved in many years. How do you feel about the importance of alumni staying engaged with the university?
Well, it's critical. I think it's critical to stay engaged with your alma mater. Elayne and I have always done that. It's just crucial. You can serve the university, and the university can serve you. It's kind of a two-way. Again, it's a two-way street.
Well, Claud, how does, in your mind, how does the Alumni Association help keep alumni engaged? And is it important to maintain a strong self-governed association to serve the university?
Well, you say, how does the Alumni Association do this?
Mm-hmm. And is it important to have a strong alumni association?
Oh yeah, I think it's important, and I think doing things to help bring niche populations of the university together, like the Black Alumni Association. I think the creation of the Black Alumni Association was very, very crucial, because many Black alums have something to offer, and I think it's just starting to reach the point that the university will benefit immensely from its Black alumni. Realizing that the first students were there in the very early 50s, the very first students. And many of those that were there when I was there are starting to retire. They're starting to finally have some extra money that they can do things with. It takes a generation to create wealth for most people. And so we have some alums that are starting to create incomes and financial affairs that will allow them to be major contributors. And we're just starting to reach, I think, that point in the history of Blacks attending OSU, that some of this will start to be seen more and more as we go forward.
Well, this may seem a little shameless, but I'm going to ask you anyway. I know you were a strong advocate for the Alumni Center as an alum and as a regent. And from your perspective, do you think has the Alumni Center matched your expectations? Because you were proponents of it. You were both financially supported it. Has it met your expectations?
Well, I think the Alumni Center is a super building. First of all, I think it's really a neat building, but I think it provides a really strong rallying point for alums. And all you have to do is go through there on game day when there's something, and the place is just crawling with people. Because prior to that, alums really didn't have a place to go when they would come to town. Now, if they want to, they can come a few hours early because there's usually something going on those days in that center that they have some place to go. If the weather's bad, they can, or if the weather's good, it doesn't matter. They have a place to go. So I think the Alumni Center was a wise decision on the part of the university to construct and develop and promote.
Claude, I know you must take some pride in being appointed to the OSU Board of Regents twice. I think the two 8-year appointments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how did that come about? Can you tell us a little bit about how you first and which governor appointed you?
Well, first of all, I've had appointments except for the current governor, the 4 previous governors. My first appointment was by Governor Nye, and that was to the Board of Examiners for Veterinary Medicine in the state of Oklahoma. That to me was really, I think, real significant, getting appointed to that board.
Professionally,
it was good. Sometimes to myself, I would laugh and say, the state where I had to go to another state to become a veterinarian, and now I administer the tests to people. God has a sense of humor, doesn't he?
That's great.
So that was my first appointment, and when that appointment ended, Governor Bellman, a Republican. See, the first one was a Democrat. Governor Bellman, a Republican, appointed me to the Board of Trustees for the University Center at Tulsa. And so I was on that board, and while I was still on that board, Governor Walters, a Democrat again, appointed me to the Board of Regents for Oklahoma State University and the A&M colleges. And then after 8 years, Governor Keating, a Republican, reappointed me for another 8-year term. So 4 different appointments, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. And to me, that meant a lot because it wasn't one of those situations where you go and try to buy a position. Because I really didn't know Governor Nye. I really didn't know Governor Bellman. I had met Governor Walters, and I had met Governor Keating because being on the board, I'd met Governor Keating many times. And then being on the board of the trustees of the University Center at Tulsa gave me a chance to meet Governor Walters. But I didn't know Governor Bellman prior to his appointment, and I didn't know Governor Nye. But Dr. Montgomery, the veterinarian from Poto that was on the board, is the person that I think most responsible for putting my name into the mix of things because he knew both of those individuals very well.
Claude, Dr. John Montgomery was the first African American OSU regent. But I guess you were the first OSU graduate African American regent. Would that be right? Because weren't you the
What
second?
about the wheat farmer? Was he a NOSU grad?
I don't remember his name.
Mm-hmm.
From Hennessy, near Hennessy, I think. He may have been. I don't know if he was he may have been an agricultural OSU grad. I don't know. Well, I don't know what his school.
You're one of very few, at least either second or third.
Right.
It got to be a sense of pride, like Sturt saying,
Yeah.
especially coming back to Oklahoma.
Well, you know, it was a real. My mom, as I said, really, she was one that told me that, you know, sometimes one door closes because the good Lord has another one that He wants you to see. But she was really, really sick when I was appointed to the board, and she was living at that time with my sister there in Tulsa, Valladine, and I remember after the reception that they had for the newly appointed regent, myself, I went back through Tulsa, and she was there on her bed. She was big old smile on her face. She wasn't able to come to Stillwater. I had them to video the reception, but she never got a chance to see it. But when I walked in the room, she had a big old smile on her face, and she said, "We made it, didn't we?" I said, "Yeah, Mama, we made it."
Was jumping back just to ask you, John Montgomery, I think, was instrumental because he was a mentor to you and a second father, as you indicated earlier. And I meant to ask you, did he in any way help you when you were setting up your practice? Also, was his influence there?
Well, the influence and the things that, you know, the design of my clinic probably has a little bit to do with the way his was set up, and so just tremendous influences. And a lot of the things that you do, and as a practitioner, there's things that you have seen work, and you feel comfortable with. So and I call him all the time to ask before I would do things, not just veterinary medicine. I'm talking about just life in general, and get his advice. Because he was a tremendous influence, still is.
I'm not sure if we brought up earlier, but I think I'd read somewhere too that when after your father died, you said he kind of adopted you as a second father. You actually worked in his clinic, didn't you?
All through junior high and high school, yes. And then in '66, I had a pretty bad car accident in June of '66. And when I got out of the hospital there in Atlanta, Georgia, and got released from the doctors, he told me to come back home to Oklahoma and work for him. And so I went back home to Poto. And at that point, I was out of the wheelchair, but I was on crutches. And he paid me to be around. I didn't do much work.
That's great.
And that first year, you know, we had we would take a crew of people on the field with us, and we earned income based on how well our crews did, a commission on their sales. But we didn't get that until January, usually about mid-January or something like that. And that first year, when I was back at school before we had, because that accident happened on June 7th, right at the second day out on the field. And so I didn't really earn any direct income that summer, just commissions off that, because I had a crew of men out there, and so I did earn. But when I went back and I was in school in September, starting my freshman year of veterinary school, after that accident in June. But the tuitions and things came due probably a month before we were to get our commission checks. And I remember calling Dr. Montgomery, and Mrs. Montgomery was on the other line, and she says, and we needed $250. She says, I think I have $250 over in the back of my purse. That's exactly what she said, over in the back of her purse. And they sent us the $250, We paid all of our next semester fees on time, and then when we got our commission check, we sent them their money back. But yeah, tremendous influence.
Claude, getting a little bit on your regent, I want to ask you some questions there. During your years on the board, what were some of the key issues that you struggled with?
Oh,
I
there.
guess some of them are the same, some of them changed, but can you highlight some of them?
So, I think that I made some contributions while I was on the board. The one of the last things that I was involved with before going off the board was getting more minorities as recipients of contracts for all the construction that's going on at OSU. I really pushed that issue hard. And now there's a report that comes out every month that states that, because we have $850 million worth of construction going on at OSU at this moment. And I really thought that because the old story of we can't find any qualified, I just got tired of hearing that. I'd heard that just one time too many one day at one of our board meetings, and was pretty upset, long story short, with that answer. And really then started to push hard because there are qualified minorities out there. And so now, for example, I think at Mary Hall, the renovations, like 25% of the construction dollars are going to minorities. Now, sometimes the minority gets redefined many different ways, but that's okay. We can deal with that too, as long as some of them are the right minority. But and the majority of the construction, and I just hope that there's someone on the Regents keeping the pressure there, because if you don't keep the pressure there, people soon forget. But there was a department set up to monitor that through the university, so I think it'll last now. That minorities are to get some of this first money from this $850 million of construction that's going on at OSU. And OSU is training these engineers. If they're not qualified, then OSU didn't do a good job of training them.
That's right. Well, other issues, are there some macro issues that you struggled with over your 16 years, those reoccurring kinds of issues you recall?
Well, another issue that always concerned me was tuition and fees for students. That comes up year after year after year, and we played a part in helping to get some of those issues. You may call them fees, but if you're paying so much per semester hour, that's tuition. It's still coming out of the parents, or coming out of somebody's pocket, same number of dollars. A rose by any name smells the same. So that was one of the issues that we were continually trying to address, was the fees and tuition. Gary Clark, who was a regent during that first 8 years, then when I was there, we were regents together. I think one of the things that he and I really pushed for was getting the team together. I've always made the statement that the strongest political entity in the state of Oklahoma is the A&M system. And what I mean by that, almost all of the veterinarians are OSU grads, state of Oklahoma. Almost all of your extension agents that are in every county, OSU grassroots. Almost all of your orthopedic physicians, OSU graduates. Not to forget about your basic alumni base. We have support and people involved at 4 other institutions: Langston University, Oklahoma Panhandle State University, NEO up in Miami, Conner State College down at Warner, Muskogee. You put all of those together, there's no reason that the A&M system can't get the things that they need. And it's because of the strong system that I think we have an OSU Tulsa today. Dr. Halligan, a very strong man, but a person from out of state going against David Bourne, who is one of the smartest men you'll ever meet, Dr. Bourne, and is as smart a politician as you'll ever meet. And you have a person coming here from New Mexico that doesn't know the Oklahoma system, but we end up with an OSU Tulsa. I think that's because of the A&M system, the strength of the A&M system. And Gary Clark and I really pushed hard at the beginning to try and get that system working together. We introduced the director of this group to the director of that group. I think I introduced a few people to you as the alumni director.
We created our Cowboys for Higher Education at that time.
Because we felt that there was no reason why all of these groups that are part of the A&M system were not talking to each other and using each other when you need numbers in Oklahoma City to make things happen. So that's one of the things that I feel real good about, is that I think I played a part in helping to get some of these systems communicating with each other so that they could work together on common issues at the Capitol. So that's, in my opinion, a huge issue. One of the things that I would always ask when things were brought before the board is, how does it affect the students? And I would often make the statement that, if the student doesn't benefit, then what's the need of it? I said, you don't need a board of regents, you don't need a president's office, you don't need a faculty council, you don't need any of these things if you're not taking care of students. And to me, that was one of the constant questions almost with any board meeting, if it involved change or something new. How does it benefit the student? That was always the bottom line with me.
Well, Claude, you mentioned earlier, one of the roles obviously is to work with your CEO, with your president of the system and of Oklahoma State, and still are. You worked with, what presidents did you work with over your 16 years?
Let's see.
John Campbell, wherever you started?
When I first moved there, Dr. Campbell. And so we worked with all of them from Dr. Campbell up through the current, up through.
So you get with Dr. Campbell, and then with what's that name? Somebody's going blank here, but the presidents through there. You had Jim Halligan, then was next, and then
Yeah, Schmidley,
and David Smidley, and I guess
and then up to Hargis, Burns
What-
Hargis.
could you share with us a little bit about about the presidents you worked with? I mean, for some of your perceived, how you perceive their strengths and I say weaknesses, but their leadership styles as president. Could you comment on that?
Well, I didn't get an opportunity to work with Dr. Campbell very long because when I was coming onto the board was about the time that he was leaving. But the others, I was involved with the interview processes and the decision making for hiring.
Any comments about their leadership style, how you perceive their strengths, what they, there's
Well,
different presidents, different
Well,
personalities?
they were all different. They were definitely different. Dr. Halligan was probably the most people-to-people person. He got involved with the student body. He was easily accessible to the students. He was around the campus. Finals week, when the student union would be open, I guess all night, and they would cook pancakes. He would go and help cook pancakes. And Ann Halligan was a breath of fresh air. She was the nicest lady that you would ever want to meet. And Dr. Halligan, I think, really helped to start stopping the skid. At that point, Oklahoma State was kind of on the skid, downhill. And he helped to stop that skid and helped to start the rebuilding process, I think. And the person that's responsible for stopping the skid many times gets a lot of bruises because something the size of OSU has a lot of momentum when it's moving any direction, either good or bad. It has a lot of momentum. And if you're trying to stop a skid, I like the fact that he started the policy on no rookies on rookies. First year faculty could not teach first year students. That was good, I thought. That he started the emphasis on language. If you're a first year student and you can't understand the language that your instructor is speaking, you're going to have a hard time making it. At the university level. Now, by the time you get to be a junior, you should have learned another language, I guess. Because you back out there, then but you have learned how to take notes, you've learned how to listen, you've learned a lot of things by the time you get to be a junior or senior. But those were some of the things that he instituted that I think was, again, for the benefit of the student. David Smedley was a different type of manager, different type of CEO. Probably not quite as people to people as Dr. Smedley was. And he was extremely smart. David Smedley, extremely smart. And he probably had a little bit less patient than some, which gets you into trouble because sometimes, some of the CEOs, they know where they want to go and they're ready to get there. But I don't know of anything that's slower than a faculty council. Now, I decided that if you want to slow down about anything, get it into a faculty council committee. And by the time they think it and rethink it and then rethink that, and then somebody gets transferred off and the whole process starts over with the rethinking. by the time they get back with an answer, it may be 2 years if it follows their normal progression. And I think Dr. Smedley had a little bit of problem sometimes with the slowness of the process, and maybe that caused him to make some decisions sometimes that seem to have been abrupt or not thought through, based, and maybe didn't leave quite as good of a taste in the mouth of the faculty council because they're two totally different entities, a council versus a CEO. And so I think all of our presidents have been strong in their way, and all of them, since I was there, have brought major accomplishments. Burns, I didn't get a chance to work with him very long from the time that he became president, but I thought that he brought something to the table that could be very beneficial, and is proving to be so. He knows how to raise funds, and he can, and as he said, he can have the world's best provost for academic affairs. But I think one of the things that was needed was someone that could raise the funds necessary to take Oklahoma State University through the next several levels.
Do you think, Claude, his experience as regent will be helpful to him as president?
Oh yeah, because he's sit on the other side of the coin. he's sit on the other side of the table, and he's had a chance to question what the presidents do. So he knows he will be questioned. and he knows the current board, he knows very, very well because he served with most of them. So he knows that this board will want answers and expect answers and expect productivity.
What are you excited about the direction the university's going now? The things that are happening, the renovation, the new construction.
Oh yeah. It's I think our university, and I like the fact that a lot of the new construction is academically related. In fact, there are more dollars being spent on academics, and has always been more money spent on academics than on athletics. Now, the one big gift comes into athletics, and everybody goes kabonkers over how much money is being spent on athletics. But if you recall, before any money was spent on athletics, we had a $250 million, Jim Halligan led a $250 million campaign.
Bringing Dreams to Life campaign.
Yeah. And I think athletics got 12% of that, I believe, was all they got. And all the rest of it went to the university structure and academic structure. And that was before they started on Gallagher-Iba. And as soon as they started talking about funds for Gallagher-Iba, people forgot that we had just finished a $250 million campaign for academics. And so people's memory can be selectively short when they want them to be. So it always kind of bothered me just a little bit that people didn't see the big picture. But I think the big picture at OSU is great. It's good. I think there's a real balance, and I think the major emphasis is on students.
Claude, you kind of lead me to this question too, because both sides of this again, with Boone Pickens, his gift, but then we think of his gift and we think of athletics, but then he made the huge gift this last year or a year ago, for endowed chairs and matching money. What would you think of that as a former region? Was that exciting for you?
That was as I tell people occasionally, my very last official act as a regent was being part of the reception committee to when the announcement was made there in front of the library, the official announcement that Boone had given $100 million and that could be used to match other alums' gifts, which then could be used to get a state match, which meant that those individuals that could give $250,000, but they could have an endowed chair for $1 million. And he didn't want his name associated with the gift, other than the fact that he gave them the money was there. It wasn't Boone's endowed chair; it was whomever's endowed chair. And that was my last official duty. It was that same day that I think the new regent was named and confirmed. So I thought that, but yeah, the gifts that Boone gave, I think, have really helped the university.
Well, looking back a little bit, I can close with two questions here, but do you have some favorite memories of OSU, of your lifelong relationship with the university?
Oh, so a lot of my favorite memories is probably feeling that perhaps I have helped the student population of the state of Oklahoma by being a member of the Board of Regents. I think that's the thing that makes me feel most proud. I think I've been part of something good, and the emphasis has always been on how does it affect students. Those are good memories. When you go to graduation, and not so much at OSU as some of the other schools that we had, but you see first generation parents with their kids, first OSU grads, and you see the smile on those people's faces. It just makes you feel good to know that you've been part of something that produced that much good feeling in people's hearts. Yeah.
Well, Claude, what maybe a little bit the same kind of question, but I think Claud Evans, pioneering black student, black veterinarian, successful small businessman, engaged alumnus, OSU regent. What's given you the most satisfaction in addition to your role as regent?
Well, probably my family is probably the most satisfaction. My family, they come first. Elayne is a tremendous person, and so that's where. Now, what comes in second to the family, then we'd have to give that a little thought. But I've been extremely blessed. Kid growing up in Southeast Oklahoma, pretty poor in terms of dollars and cents, but extremely rich in terms of parents that told us we could do and be what we wanted to be. My dad, as I said earlier, he passed away when I was 13. But when I was younger, I can remember him telling me to do some chore. And I said, well, Daddy, I can't do that. He says, son, let me tell you something. I kill can't. I whipped couldn't until he could. And I'm going to whip you until you do if you don't. And so...
Positive reinforcement.
Positive reinforcement. And so, that was the type of environment I grew up in. Can't was never the first answer. Now, there may be things that we were not able to do, but we didn't start out by saying, I can't do it. We gave it the big try and went from there. And And I think that played as big a part in my life as anything, is having parents that told us you can do and be what you want to be, which makes you concentrate on your goals rather than concentrating on why something didn't happen. And so I've been extremely blessed. I've been around the world. I've seen more things than most people will ever see. I've had an opportunity to meet people like Jerry Gill, Boone Pickens, just you know. I've had a chance to meet people like Spencer Hayes, people that are making a difference in the lives of people, and most people don't have that opportunity. Most people go through their lives and never meet the quality of people that I've had the privilege of meeting. I've just been blessed. Long story short, I've just been blessed.
Well, let me close by asking this question. How do you hope people remember Claud Evans?
Well,
I know you're not gone yet, but
I was about to say, I hope they remember me for what I'm still doing,
for a few more years,
rather than for what I've done.
Right.
I hope they remember. I hope the things that they remember me for I haven't even done yet, because we are still involved in the lives of people. We still are trying to make a difference in the world we live, and I suspect that some of the things that I've been blessed to do will be minor compared to what I will do in the future.
Great. Well, is there anything we had covered? I mean, anything you'd like to add?
I don't know what we haven't covered. Unless you want to know what I did for Valentine's Day.
No.
I cooked dinner for Elayne.
Congratulations.